So we'll start. Moran, Shelly, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Great. So uh, we're here as part of a group that we want to learn more about what we call the mitzvah heroes here in Israel and elsewhere. We'll also have a few maybe from not just in Israel. And uh, these are programs that have been funded usually through, at the beginning, from Danny Siegel and Zeeb Tzedakah Fund, and over the years from other tzedakah funds, particularly hands-on tzedakah that I work very closely with in Boca Raton. And it's very nice that we have these kinds of programs that show how to be so efficient and effective at what one can do. And your organization, Shachen Tov, is one of the most efficient and effective organizations on the planet Earth. How's that? So before we get into the organization, let's find out a little bit about you, Moran, if we may. So where were you born?
I was born in Israel.
Yes, where?
Grew up in Mitzpe Ramon.
Mitzpe Ramon.
Yeah.
That's like down south. That's near the crater, right?
Exactly.
Yes. And what kind of family life did you have? Were you was it a Dati family or not? Or?
So I grew up in a religious family.
Yeah.
And we've been living in Mitzpe Ramon until I was 17. And my mother was a teacher there. My father worked there in the army. And when he retired, we moved to Ashkelon when I was 17. I studied in my high school years were in Bnei Akiva Ulpena in Arad, also in the Negev.
So you finished. So it didn't matter that you moved from. I mean, when you were 17, were you had finished high school or you were just finishing?
No, we moved to Ashkelon when I was 17. I finished high school when I was 18.
So you had another year, but you were studying in Arad anyway. Yes. So you didn't lose your friends.
No. Yes, okay. I stayed with my friends from high school. It was a boarding school, you know, like Ulpena where you sleep.
Yes. And you did a bagrut, which is the high school matriculation.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I finished there. I stayed there, you know, like finished my studies there. Then I did my national service for 2 years.
National service is, what did you do for your national service?
I was the first year in Jerusalem in an organization called the El Ami, which organized Jewish seminars to teachers and rabbanim in Ulpanot and Yeshivot. I did my second year in Gush Katif in Evet Kalim.
Worked there. Wow, very nice.
I worked there in the school, in the elementary school, and with the youth movement of Bnei Akiva. These were my 2 years of national service.
Were they good for you? Did you enjoy them?
I enjoyed them a lot, especially my second year in Gush Katif. It felt very much like the service that I wanted to have. We had good connection with the kids, with the community. It was a meaningful year. It was 1 year before the disengagement, and a lot of people knew it's going to happen. So it was like 25 years to the school. So we had like a big celebration of the school. So it was a meaningful year.
So without getting political, but a year later, you're saying that's when Israel pulled out of the Gaza Strip and out from Gush Katif, so that you had a very personal connection there.
Yes.
And so that must have been very difficult for you.
Yeah, it was difficult, like to see the families. I have close friends who moved from there, then had to live in temporary solutions.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people today moved on. Thank God.
many did, but some are still stuck.
Right.
Some of them never recovered from being transferred out of Gaza into other communities. Some recovered very well, but a lot of people had all their business was there and family and friends. It was a very traumatic time in Israel as well. So
Indeed.
okay, yeah. And then afterwards, what did you do? You started
Afterward,
working?
I started my bachelor. I studied economics and business administration
Where?
in Ashkelon and Bar Ilan University.
Very nice.
So I finished my 3 years there, and then I did shlichut in Atlanta for 1 year.
Who were you with in Atlanta?
Bnei Akiva.
With Bnei Akiva. Very nice.
Yes.
I lived in Atlanta for 5 years. I made Aliyah from Atlanta, by the way.
So I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that you were
We
there
know each
either.
other for many years.
Yeah, I made Aliyah in 1984, before you were born. So
So
not to
yes, so
worry.
I did the year there working for Yeshiva Atlanta, and worked in the Toko Hills community and Israel community. We worked also with a group of Israelis there. Did a lot of community activities and holidays activities, and part of the youth movement. We got that going also in the neighborhood for the kids of the community.
Right.
So this was
That's
my
great. Now, during your university studies, were you volunteering anywhere? Were you working?
I was volunteering in an organization called Simcha LaYeled.
That helps
Yes,
children for medical needs, hospital
medical
needs.
needs, exactly. I was volunteering with a child who had a CF, cystic fibrosis disease.
Right.
And I did Perach, which is kind of a scholarship and volunteering project.
Right. Very nice. So
And
for those who don't know, hold on. For those who don't know, in Israel, almost any student at university can get a partial scholarship by volunteering. It's almost an automatic program. There's some rules, of course, and how many hours and where they can volunteer and how much they get a scholarship. But almost everyone takes advantage of it because it's free money if you work for it. So Yes. Okay. Great. And then?
And then I came back to Israel. I started to work a little bit, like for the Israeli Experience program.
Israel Experience is a travel program that they also run some birthright groups and other kinds of groups. Yes.
Right. And so I was teaching also Ethiopian kids in Ashkelon. Working in teaching also like math and English in professional high school in Ashkelon also. I did this for a period of time. Then I started working for Intel for a short period of time. But I didn't find myself there. I had to do something like more meaningful. I felt a little bit like Homer Simpson, like in this big factory. And
you wanted to come back to community work?
Yes, at this point, like although I did many things in the third sector organization, I didn't know that this is how it is called and that this is like a specific career.
Right.
So I started to study in Migdal Oz. And I had a friend there who told me that there's like a master degree that you can study in nonprofit management. And I was curious about that, so I started to learn about this program. And I thought it will be something that will be good for me. So I started this program, and at the same time, I started working for a nonprofit called Gvanim, which sits in Ashkelon also.
Right.
Its center is in Sderot, but they have another big center in Ashkelon.
Right. Hold on. Jonathan, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, first,
Or are you
Moran.
just waving?
No, Moran, your record, your story of volunteering Hitnadvut is quite remarkable. What would you trace it all to? How do you come by this? This is not, most kids I know don't do this fabulous track that you did. What brought you to this? What do you think? Your family, your life, your experience?
It's a good question. I think when I grew up in Mitzpe Ramon, I was very much involved in the community life. We had a strong Bnei Akiva youth movement. We did a lot of chesed activities. I felt very involved in the community. And when we moved to Ashkelon, I felt a little bit, I wasn't part of the local community back then. Most of my life was already in like boarding school in the Ulpana. And this part was very much missing to me. And so when I grew up, when I became a student, and when I moved to Jerusalem, I started to look for opportunities where I can bring back to life this community part that I had in me. So there were a few things that I did, but Shachen Tov was the most meaningful of them. Where I find myself back again that I can contribute to the community and to do a meaningful volunteering work after my work hours. This is what I
So we'll take you. So you were at this organization Gvanim, which is in Sderot in Ashkelon,
Yeah.
and they're sort of like a urban kibbutz where they have members live in the community, and then they do volunteer work in the community.
This is in Sderot. They have that, but it's an established organization now. We had like the center in Ashkelon worked with people who had mental health issues. So I started to work there. I did a few projects of social business. Like we opened a coffee store there. We had a store in Tel Aviv who sold all the products from different rehabilitation centers all around Israel. So I felt they're very much connected also because there was a lot of social work there that I was involved in. And parallel to this, I started volunteering in Shachen Tov also.
So Shachen Tov, which we'll hear a lot about now, in English is the Good Neighbor Association, the nonprofit of Shachen Tov. So how did you hear about Shachen Tov? How did you first get started in there?
So actually, I wanted to volunteer in Pamonim. Yes, I remember.
Pamonim is another organization that helps people in need, particularly getting their finances back in order. It helps them understand how to control their finances better so they can live a more stable life financially. Yes.
Right. So I started my process there. I had the interviews. I had they started the training program. But back then I was living half a year in Jerusalem, half a week in Jerusalem, half a week in Ashkelon, and the first half was in Ashkelon. So, and the training day was on Sunday, so I couldn't participate in the training program. And I kept looking for other volunteers opportunities, and I saw that they were looking for a CFO in Shachen Tov. So I sent my CVs, and I had an interview, a few interviews with the people back then who was part of the.
How long ago was this? About
7.5 years, something like that.
Okay.
2014, the end of 2014, I think.
Yeah.
And then I started my volunteering in Shachen Tov, and since then I'm there.
So you started right away as a financial person, not even as a street volunteer bringing food to people.
Right. But I was always like looking to be very connected to the field. I had very good connections with the other volunteers, with the branch coordinators, with the people who volunteered in the financial department, if you can call it this way.
Right.
I went a lot of time to the activities themselves. It was very important for me to be very connected to what's happening in the field.
So now it sounds like a CFO is a paid position, but you're a volunteer at Shachen Tov.
Yeah, that's the charm of Shachen Tov. Everyone
So
volunteers
tell us a
there.
little bit about how Shachen Tov started 21 years ago already, 22 years ago.
22, yeah, almost 22.
Yeah.
So there was a small group of young people from Jerusalem who saw that there was a family in the neighborhood that didn't have enough food for Shabbat. So they started organizing packages for them, and it grew to other families that they knew about in the neighborhood. And since then, like there were more branches, it spread. There were more branches in Jerusalem. There are now like branches all over. I think people who knew Shachen Tov said, "Oh, I want to do this in my neighborhood also." So it started with the food delivery program. And since then, they had, before I entered the Shachen Tov, other projects that they ran. It changed around along the years, but we have more projects that we do than just food delivery.
Wait, hold on, wait. So with
Okay.
food, so you started with one family,
Yes.
and today, how many families does Shachen Tov bring food to?
So
About
in the high holidays, it can be more than 2,000.
2,000.
Yeah. During the week, like a regular week, I think around 700, something like that.
700. And you're located in 9 different centers around Israel?
I need to count. We have Jerusalem, we have Tel Aviv, Tveria, Fat, Kiryat Shmona, Be'er Sheva, Kadima, Bet Shemesh.
That's close.
Yeah, close enough.
And
That's
in
like
Jerusalem,
for the food delivery.
right, for food.
Yeah.
And in Jerusalem, you have more than one center.
Yes, we have around 7.
7 just in Jerusalem.
Yes.
And this huge organization, because you're dealing with, let's say, 15, 16 centers in 8 or 9 cities, you're telling me it's all run by volunteers still today, 22 years later.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so you have to understand that's unheard of in the world. There are small organizations that are volunteer, or they use a lot of volunteers, but they have one paid or a few paid people. But I guess the policy of Shachen Tov was to stay volunteer.
Yes, exactly. I think this is part of the magic of Shachen Tov. I don't even know a lot of times how to explain how it works. I just feel like I do my small part in it, and I meet all the time like the people we have, and it's really incredible.
How many volunteers do you think you have across the country?
I think more than 700, like during the week.
Wow, it's amazing. And so you were the CFO, helping run all the finances, keeping the budget in order. And what is the annual budget of Shachen Tov approximately?
Today is more than 2 million.
2 million shekels.
Yes.
So that's about $600,000 annually.
Yes.
And on that, we'll talk about some of the other programs, but you mostly feed 2,000 people, run 700 volunteers, and you were then chosen a year or two ago to move up a little higher in the organization.
I don't know if I chose, but
you were chosen. You're the chosen one.
CFO CEO said he wants to move on to do other things. And
How long was he
asked me-
CEO? About
About
more
6
than
years
5 years.
also, I
6
think.
years, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Now-
it was a long period of time that he asked me to replace him, and I
Right.
was considering it, but still I wasn't ready for it. And then I felt like, okay, like I'm ready to move on to do like more than just finance, because I realized that I want to do more than just finance.
Great.
So then
And-
we changed.
Okay. And all this time for the last 7, 8 years that you're volunteering, you're working, no? You have a real
Yeah.
job?
Yes, all of us have real jobs.
So, okay, so what do
full-time
you do?
positions.
Yeah,
I
what do you
work
do in real life?
as the budget director of JDC Europe and Asia Africa.
JDC Europe and
Yes.
Africa. Great. Yes. Jonathan's looking because he worked at JDC for many years in the Russian department.
Das ist schön vorstellen.
15 years, yes. You work
15
in the joint in Yerushalayim?
Yes.
Who's your boss?
Today we have a new boss called Ale. He moved
Who's
now
the old-
from Moshe House, and Diego Nick was the previous one.
Yes.
Okay, great. So you work full time, and then you basically run a huge organization. Do you have a real life outside of work and volunteering?
I
ever-
try.
You have friends, you see movies, you go out to a restaurant every so often.
I have intensive social life, but Shachen is also part of what's giving me a lot of motivation, and the joint is it's an incredible organization. It gives me also
Right.
a lot of meaning in my life, but still there I also do just the financial part. So Shachen
Right.
is, for me today, is an opportunity to bring like other sides that sides that I can contribute in, and besides that, so Shachen is something that gives me a lot of motivation in like after work hours, let's put it this way. But I do
Right.
have my social life.
Okay. So
Doesn't,
you mentioned that besides all the food projects around the country, what else does Shachen Tov do?
we have a project called Moving Coffee Shops. I don't know if that's the real mobile coffee shops. Yes, we come to places where they're like isolated from society. It can be shelters for women. It can be a mental health institution or an old age home where people don't come and go out so often. So we bring the coffee shop to them. We come with a coffee machine, with cakes, cookies, and a social activity, and we try to bring some life to this place.
So a group of volunteers comes and
Yes. Some
yeah.
of them are like once a month, some of them once a week. Come to these places and try to bring some life and the coffee shop to them.
Nice.
So this is the mobile coffee shops project.
Okay, and what else?
We have centers for youth at risk, which we run with the Yechida Lekidum Noar. You can translate it for me.
Sure, thanks. It's the municipal division for youth at risk.
Right. So we work with them. They bring the social worker who works with the kids, and we bring the volunteers and the program coordinator, and we bring the ongoing budget for the activities. So they meet once a week there, listening to them, also having some social activities or activities around the holidays, working with them about their goals in life, volunteering, serving in the army, we're going to national service. So we do a lot of work also in this area. And we
Great.
have some change program like warm winter, where we buy the radiators and blankets to the families in need that we know. And sometimes we renovate some houses. So we try to leave some space for people to initiate volunteering projects. And if they can get along with our programs, we try to get them going also.
You also do some after-school tutoring for kids?
So this program for the last 2 years was stopped in a little
Right,
bit.
right.
Not just because Corona, but also because schools were having more hours for kids. But we are still, this is something which is still in the air, and we try to do. Also sometimes purchasing things for school, for the kids, books or bags, whatever they need.
Right.
But this is still something which is in the air, and we hope to see where there's a real need and to keep it going again.
Wow. So you do quite a bit, Moran, at Shachen. You personally and the organization itself.
The organization. I for sure can take credit for whatever Shachen is doing. It's really like each person who is in Shachen is involved in Shachen, and especially our branches coordinators. They invest a lot of hours and a lot of time working with the communities, working with the volunteers. So it sounds like I have a big title, but mostly like our people also in the field are doing an incredible work and dedicating a lot of hours to this.
It makes your job easy.
Yes, if we have like the right people in place, yes, it makes my life much easier. It's true that
I know
like, the issue starts when we don't find. Sometimes we don't find. We have like a void. Like to recruit people to volunteering, it's not easy. You need to find the right people, but once you find the right person,
right.
really amazing.
And I know that in some of the food centers, or maybe all of them, you have a policy where you try not to just give food, but you also want the people to learn to help themselves, or
Right.
that they shouldn't always think that every week they're going to get food forever and ever.
Right. So in general, we try to refresh the list that we work with the municipality, like the social welfare.
Social workers.
Yes, the department there, they give us the vast majority of the list of the families that we work with. And but we do try to refresh them. And in Tveria, they have a special committee who work with the families, and they have incentives. If like, let's say one of the person starts working, they can extend the food package delivering for another half a year or a few months. And if both of the family members work, so it's even longer. And they also try to work with them on really going back to the work circle or earn more money. And this is also something that we will try to do a bit more I hope, in other branches in Jerusalem soon. And we also have in Kiryat Menachem, you know, Ofer's work, where he works with a big group of his volunteers are people who are in a rehabilitation process.
Right.
Some from drugs, alcohol, they come, they volunteer in the food, in packing the food or sorting vegetables for the food packages every week. So he does with them also like a rehabilitation process, which is also amazing.
Terrific.
Yes.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Moran personally, or about Shachen Tov, about how you get an organization like this running? Is anybody interested in finding out more? Ah, it's always the awkward moment, right? Robin, are you talking, or are you just on mute on purpose?
No, now I am on. Now I'm talking.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Moran, during Corona, I was involved with delivering food in Armona Netziv, but I don't know if it was with Shachen Tov or if it was the Matnas getting the food from another place. This was prepared meals. This wasn't food baskets. Was that through you, or because they didn't really tell us who we were working for? We just worked.
Yes, I think that the project of delivering food ready, like already made the food for the families was something which Pikud Haoref did.
Okay.
And they ran it through the community centers. We helped a little bit in some of the places with volunteers or with the infrastructure that we have, but this work was mostly their work.
And is Tzachi separate from you, or do you also work with them? Because I know they also do food delivery.
Yeah, so Tzachi is also a different organization, but we did, like now somebody told me about like that we need to get together to get some, like to do some work together.
Okay.
Great.
So we're in favor and cooperating with whoever we can.
Right.
Because unfortunately, there's a lot of need in Jerusalem for it.
Yeah.
Right. So there are a lot of organizations, but there's also a lot of need. So,
Exactly.
yes. Okay. Well, we appreciate your time. Anyone else before we go? Okay. I promised you half an hour. And there we go. So we'd like to keep it short and sweet. Zoom does not have to be 1 hour. It can be half an hour.
You meet the deadline.
Exactly. You know, the alarm goes off. So, but thank you very, very much, Moran, for your time. I know you're a very busy person doing incredible work, and we appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you for your support in all the years. It's a meaningful support for us.
A pleasure. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.